Hi, my name is Kasim Bataine and I am senior software engineer. I do full stack software development. I'm going to show you how to use Web API in .NET and how can you easily implement it. So Web API is an ideal framework for building HTTP services, RESTful services on the top of .NET framework. Web API can reach a broad range of clients by generating the data in raw format like JSON and XML. And we all know that Web API is mainly for RESTful services. So RESTful service is an architecture which uses HTTP protocol. Web API, if you're a .NET developer, you must be familiar with the MVC framework that we all use to create web applications and web pages. Web API is very similar to the MVC framework, but Web API has a few differences. Web API returns data, serialized data in JSON or XML format, but the MVC returns this data in a view, so you need to have that view rendered to see the results. And also MVC controllers inherit from controller base class. Web API controller inherit from the API base controller base class. And also API, they uses the HTTP verbs to turn a request into an action method. On the other hand, MVC uses the URL path to turn a request into an action method. Web API is very popular because Web API enables your application to reach more clients, mobile applications, mobile devices, tablet, even application on different platforms. They can access your API because your API serialize the application models and data into JSON format and output them into the HTTP response. Then clients can easily read the serialized format and deserialize the data into its original format. So I'm going to start showing you the tutorial. I just fired Visual Studio 2019 and I'm going to create a new project and we're going to call this okay. So we select ASP.NET Web Applications for C Sharp using the C Sharp. We call our project, let's call it USA Movie. So we're going to create a movie theater website, actually a web API application that will have services, web API services that different clients can consume to see the movies and their prices and promotions and so on. So let's get that. We're going to pick an empty template. We're going to mark web API to add folders and references, no authentication, and create. So in this tutorial, I don't have test data. So I don't have a real database for this movie theater. So I'm going to create test data to just for this demo. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create uh, a new folder. Actually, let's look at this first. You see that this is an empty application. I don't see the view folder because it's not MVC. We see the model, the control application start, and here we see how the web API configure the routing. So the default route would have to have the API, the name or the URL of this project. If you click here, you get the URL of this project. Here's the URL, and after that you will have the API, then the controller name, then the ID if it's provided. This is marked as optional. So let's get started. First I'm going to create our model for our data model. So let's create the movie class, and to speed up I already typed up this entity, so I'm going to just copy and paste here. So this is the object, the movie object. It has ID and name and description, and if this movie for kids or no, only for adults, and the price and the release year. After we created this, we're going to create a new controller, add a new controller, and we're going to call it, we're going to select the API to controller, the empty template, and add it. We see the name would be film controller, add it. Scaffolding framework generates that for us automatically. We see the base class is API controller. Let's get started. First, we need to have our test data. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to hard code our data. I'm going to hard code it. So I'm going to create, in real world scenario, you will have an entity framework data context class in here, or you will have some call to a data access folder where you have your data base access classes. So I'm going to create a folder and call it data access, and in that data access folder I'm going to create a class that has the method to get me the data, to get me the test data. So data access, I'm going to call it, and I already typed up this method. It's a static method, so I don't need to initialize the class to call it because it's marked as a static as we see in here. So this get films from database, you add this, okay, get films for that from database, and you see here I already hard coded 6 movies with the names, description, prices, and for kids or no, and the release year to use them in our application. So what I'm going to do here, private, we're going to get list of movies, list of movies, call it movies. We resolve this by adding a reference to the models, okay, and data access. Now we're going to create first web API to return list of available movies. So I'm going to say what we're going to do. We are just going to say, let's say var. Actually, I'm just going to return the movies. So we are returning this movie object, which is a list of objects. Let's test that. So when we test that, we have I can test it with free tools. We have a Fiddler and we have Postman. They are very efficient tools, easy to they let you test your API. I would go with Postman. You can download it. Just type Postman. It's a free tool. You can download it quickly. Does not require any registration or payment. So let's test our first API that we created. So the API we created, let's get the URI. So the URL of this is here. Here's the URL. Okay. And after the URL, I will add actually API fill. And we'll go here and we run it. We run our we're going to send a GET request to here, send it. Now we're trying to access our API, our web API, to get a list of the movies, and we should get that in JSON format, serialized. This is our Postman. what is doing. We see the results in here. We got 6 movies right here. 6 of them returned back. Perfect. So this is the first API. Let's create another one to return just one movie, not a list of movies, just one movie. So the second one would have to return only one object, and we're going to pass an integer ID. But here when we return the movies, we need to filter and return only one. So we say ID equals the one we passed. That way we return only one movie. Let's test that. Go here and say that I need to get back the Before Midnight movie, number 3. So I passed 3 in here, and oh, we got an error. Actually, so run that. So as we said, we're going to test it with Postman and get the Before. We should get one movie back. Yep, we should get one back, which is okay. Before Midnight movie, number 3. Perfect. So we see now we're passing the ID of the movie that we need to get. So we get one back. Oh, it's one of, yep, and this is back 3. You see, wherever you change the ID, you get that one. Okay, let's create one more API to return. Actually, we need to return movies that we can afford. So let's pass a parameter in the URL in the query string to have a minimum price and maximum price. We don't need expensive movies, so we could say that movie, we're going to get list of movies back. By the way, IEnumerable or list, they're the same. This is just more generic, IEnumerable. So they all return a collection. This list of movies return a list of movies. IEnumerable return a collection which includes list. So in this case, we're going to pass 2 parameters in here. We're going to pass mini price and maximum price. When we do the filter here, we're going to do the movies. We're going to filter that where the price, we're going to see that where the price is greater or equal to the minimum price, and also the price is less or equal to the maximum price. So that way, oh, okay. Actually, all make it to list. So we're passing minimum price and maximum price, and we only return movies that we can afford. Let's test that. So let's run it. Go to Postman, and we're going to pass parameters. Let's do the mini price equal to $25 and max price equal $35. Let's do that. Perfect. We got 4 movies, they all between our price range, between 25 and 35. So if we do between 30 and 35, we should only get 2 back. We should get this one, the Before Midnight, and get the Star Wars. Only 2. Let's try that. Perfect. Before Midnight, Star Wars. So we see that we can pass in the query string parameters, and our controller, our API controller here, can read and access that and return the value based on the results. And we see that here that if we're going to pass more complex searching parameters, maybe the URL will get too long and not looking nice and even not friendly to use. So is there any other way to use that? Yes, we can send this, the more complex set of parameters in the body of the request. So we need to make a post request where we can post in the body a JSON format of your parameter. But how we can do that? We can do that by using the DTO. The DTO, let me talk about that. So what's the DTO? Data transfer object. Data transfer object is a data container for moving data in and out between layers. So they only hold the necessary data. So let me do that here. I'm going to add a new folder. I'm going to call this folder data transfer DTO data transfer object. I'm going to add in it actually a class. I'm going to call this class search movie created. In this class I'm going to have a properties for the parameters I need. So if I need public decimal mini price, get and set, I'm going to give it default value, minimum value, and also I'm going to add another property for the maximum price. I'm going to call it max price and give it default value, so that if they are not provided, they will not, that will not impact our query. So we see that I have here an object that has two properties. Let's go back to my method in here. So in my method here I'm going to create a new method, and this method will return a list, or actually variable of a movie object, and we are expecting the parameter to be from this type, search movie, and we're going to resolve this by adding a reference to the DTOs. And here what we're going to do, we are going to in this case I'm going to return movie object, where we're doing the same as we did in this method, but we are replacing the parameter to be coming from the body of the request. So this parameter is not here, but actually it's in the request body, actually minimum price, and here you see that. So we see that this parameter is being passed in the body of the request through the post, and we are doing the same. So our URL should not be too long. So let's test that. So I'm going back in here. I'm going to create a new call to my going to get rid of the URL, make it short, because we don't need to pass the parameter. You see, you don't have access to the body of the request, but if you make the verb to be post, you do have access to it. So let's create a JSON formatted object. So this object should include two properties, and first property is called mini price, and it has $25 value, and the second one is max price, and the value is $35. So So this is different than this one, the one before, because we used to pass everything in the query string. Now we're not passing anything here, we just have in the body a JSON formatted object, includes mini price and maximum price, and now we can make the call. Perfect. You see that this call returns four objects, the object that including our price range. So if we change that to 30, we should get two of them. Do that, we got two, perfect. So that means our API works. So we see that how using the body of the request. So API using two ways of getting the data, one from the query string and the second one from the body of the HTTP request. Let's create one more API method that will do the put, that will edit a record. So it will be, record. In this one, we are going to use data sent from two different locations. We are going to return back here. We're going to return back a string, and we are going to say put, and we have the ID, and we're going to pass an entire movie object. So we're going to pass a movie object, call it request, and here let's see what we can do. Actually, why we're going to send the whole movie? Why don't we create, why do we need to send the entire? Let's go back to the DTO. So we see that in the DTO here, that the movie object has extra data that we are not going to edit, like the ID, like the kids, it's for kids or adult, and the release year, they're not going to change. So why do we need to send them over the network in the request? We need to make our call and our API more efficient, so we only pass the necessary data. So we need to create a movie DTO to just transfer the necessary data through our web API endpoints. We need only three objects as shown here. So let me go and create that and use it instead of the movie. So we call it movie DTO. And this class is going to be like that. And we're going to have everything in the movie object, but we are going only to use the necessary one. So I'm going to grab all of them and keep only the necessary one. We don't need the release here because it's not going to change. The prices we need it because we can change it. We can also, we don't need the 4 kids because it's not going to change, and we don't also need the ID itself. You may keep the ID, but we don't need it. I think I don't need it. So let me go back here. What we have here, we have, actually here we should make a call. In real world scenario, we should make a call to our database to make the update. But in this tutorial, I'm going just to make sure that I'm getting the values correctly. So the value I get are correct. My method receives the request values. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say to return a string, and the string is an ID to make sure I got the ID correctly. And also I'm going to get I'm going to read the name, the updated name from the request. So let's see if that works. We go here and actually a new one. I'm going to make this both. The verb is these are the verbs that Web API uses to decide which action method to use. So put, I'm going to pass an ID of a 3, and I'm going to go to the body. I'm going to send an object, and this object should have 3 values, the one that we are using in here. three property name, description, and price. So let me go back here. Let's say this is the name, description, price. I go to the name, and this is updated name, whatever value, and the description has updated whatever description, and price. Let's say the price is $30 and make it JSON formatted. Perfect. So now we can make that call. We should get back the ID3 and the updated name as string. So let's run the application first. And let's make the call to the API. So the call to the API to update this record. Perfect. We got back 3 and updated name. Let's test it with like 5 and updated XX name. Send it back. Well, we get it back. Perfect. So that means our API works perfect. Let's do one more action method in here. The action method going to be delete record. I'm going to create a new method, return string called delete. To delete, we're going to pass an ID only. I don't need to send anything in the body, because if we go to the Postman and change the verb to delete, let me create one. Let me show you. Get don't have access to the body of the HTTP request. Post does have access. You can have message in the message data in the body. Put also the same. Let's go try to delete. Delete does not. No, delete has also. So all of them, most of them have, except get. So let's get back here and see how the delete we're going. We should be making a database. Call your database to delete. Because we don't have a database, I'm just going to return a string to make sure that I receive the parameter correctly. So say ID to string. Perfect. And run it. Let's make that call again. So my call would be not delete, actually. Let me copy. Okay, going to be delete. The verb is delete. Here is the parameter. I'm not passing anything in the body, and make the call. Perfect. I got 5, I got 6 here. So that means my API are working. Okay, so let's recap. We have a get to return a list of movies. We have get a specific movie by the ID. We can get a list of movies in our that we can afford with a price range. This one here uses a query string to get to send the parameter, and the second one uses it does the same, but it uses the body of the request to get the parameter, and the put does use both the parameter coming from the query string and from the body, and the delete uses the query string as well. And we see that it's very important that we understand how Web API works. Now, after I have did this, we explained that DTO, how we can use the data transfer object. Let me introduce one more thing, which is here. You see the string here? I have the ID coming from URI, and here from the body. So if I make this change in here, does this impact this action method? Let's try it again, the put action method. Those attributes basically tells you exactly where is this parameter coming from. So let's test it. Let's test the put. Okay, actually, put. Yeah, we were sending 2. This is the one, not delete here. Put, we're sending the ID, and this is test it. It's working. So these attributes, they're used just to clarify in your code where this parameter is coming from. So we see that the HTTP request carry parameters, and we can use these attributes in our code to clarify where they're coming from. Also, we can see that there are different verbs, attribute verbs. Those attributes can map an action method from the HTTP verbs without the need to change the action method's name. So you can have friendly name wherever you like. Let's do that. So let me come here. Here, right now, my API maps each request based on the verb. So if there's a get, so the name of the action methods, they all start with the verb's name: get, or post, or put. So if I'm going to change put to be like update this movie. This is friendly name. Let me run it to see if it still works. So we're going to make sure that when we change this name, nothing happens. So let's try to make the call. The request resource does not support HTTP PET method. So Web API didn't know where to send this request, this put request, because the name doesn't. There is no method starts with put. So here where we use the verb tag. So we see HTTP put. Okay. So after we added this tag, this attribute, now our API knows that this is going to handle put request. So let's try that to see if this attribute solves the problem. Let's run it again. Great, so it's working. So let's change them and get a better name. So I would say HTTP get, and change the name here completely to be give me movies, and for the second one here do the same, give me one movie, and here also we'll do the same. Say give me movies within my price range. Okay, and here we're going to say post, going to say that give me movies, give me affordable movies. See how we are able to change the names of the methods so they make more sense, and we don't need to have the verb HTTP verb style in the name. And here going to say delete, going to say remove movie, and they all work perfect now. Let me test one of them. Let me test the post here where we send price range. Test it, still work. Let's try to do the delete, test it. It's not what actually, this is different application actually. So this is different one. So yeah. So they all work. Let's get back here and actually let's take a closer look at the post. request in here at the post, this one here. So we see here that we are getting the values and we are returning a list of movies. What if we would like to return some messages, to add some validations, to see, to make our method better by doing validation. So let's try to do that. If the request minimum price is greater than our request maximum price, in that case I would like to return bad request with a friendly message telling that max price must be greater than minimum price. Also, I need to do one more validation to see if my model state is valid. If it's not valid, I'm going to return internal server error. So I don't need to make any call to my database if any of these validations doesn't hold. So let's see the problem here. The problem in this case, we are returning we're not returning a list of movies, we're returning a bad request. And here we're not returning a list of movie or a bad request, we're returning internal server error. And here we are returning a list of movies. So the return type cannot be more generic. Yes, it can. Web API introduced the iHTTP action result, which is a very generic interface, and this one handles different types of returns. So here we just need to add OK message. So put the results in an OK in the body of an OK message to hand response. See how we change it? See now how it looks like? It's different now. Let's test that. Before I test that, let me give you an overview about iHTTP action results. It's an interface that all web API results are built in its implementation. It makes it easy to allow different response types in the same generic return types. So no need to use exception to handle such scenario. So sometimes we used to have exception. If you used to write your response message, you used to have some scenario that where you can just do exception and instead of returning some friendly message. Also, this interface use async and await by default, which is great. Also, it does simplify your unit testing for your controller. So let's test this change. This is a great interface and recommended to use and has a lot of advantages as we discussed. So let me test it now and see what we get. Run it. Go to Postman. Okay. Here we are going to send actually wrong. So the minimum price is greater than the maximum price, so we're not gonna make any call to our database and have any load on our backend SQL server or whatever database engine you have. We just can validate that and return response. Let's try that. Perfect. We got 400 BAT request message with a friendly message. Maximum price must be greater. So the client's calling your web API understands what's wrong. So let's fix it. 25. We should get results now. Yep, we got results. Also, so this is a very recommended way, is a very good way and recommended to use it instead of just using movies. By the way, I can replace all of them. So if I go to the first one here and replace it with the iHTTP action results and the movie return and an OK response message. Perfect. So I can can do all of them, by the way. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. This is a very quick overview to get you started on Web API. I'm going to post another video to tell you more about Web API in .NET Core, which is much more powerful. And also I'm going to post another video show you how to call and consume your API from JavaScript, like a jQuery call using Ajax. So thank you very much for watching.